So has anyone actually played Gears 5? No, seriously, Microsoft said it was a big deal at launch with some kind of new download record for the series thanks to its inclusion with Xbox Game Pass. But I've been telling my friends for months now, Gears 5 is awesome, Gears 5 is beautiful, Gears 5 has in-motion animation and lighting and visual design that rivals anything on the market, maybe even sets the bar for PvP games in some respects. Gears 5 has ridiculous amounts of content these days for this type of release, all things considered, but nobody seems to play it or talk about it all that much. And I guess I understand why Gears gets a bad rap. When the original was revealed with a trailer at E3 2005, essentially a tech demo for the Xbox 360 hardware, and it shook the world, followed a year later by the now legendary Mad World trailer, Gears felt like one of the first true next-generation franchises of its era. It was visually and stylistically impressive. It was fully featured with a campaign and multiplayer. It had a young, brash, but impressively talented up-and-coming developer, Cliffy B, hand-in-hand with Microsoft selling Gears of War as the future of video games to the world. And in an era where PS3 had struggled out of the gate to define itself through new games and franchises,
it's Ridge Racer! Ridge Racer!
Gears of War was the best-looking, most intriguing game on the market. The original Gears, at the very least leading up to the release through its flood of well-timed marketing and flat-out impressive presentation, was cool. Gears was cool. Gears isn't really cool anymore. It's not that Gears has changed all that much, despite what some fans might tell you about the new Coalition era of titles. But when you ask people today, you get reasons for why not that feel a decade baked in at this point. And that level of apathy towards a franchise that on the surface still feels so familiar, if a bit dated, can be difficult to shake. I don't like third-person shooters, Gears is cheesy, it's the Transformers of video games, the multiplayer is just shotgun rolling clusterfuck to see who has the best ping, it's a Chad game. Honestly, all pretty fair criticisms. Gears is, after all, still Gears. Cutting an enemy player with a chainsaw in PvP feels as satisfying today as it did a decade ago, but there's also this strange disparity at times where it feels like more experienced players who have the movement and the map layout down can just downright stunt on less experienced players. Rolling around, shoddy out at close range, ripping through enemy teams, flailing to aim the Lancer at point blank is an eternal part of the experience. And Gears 5 is still very much Gears. It's still a little bit on the corny side, even with its greatly improved voice acting, visual technology, and, to a lesser but still existent degree, the writing, all of which make the story pretty darn good for a video game. Its multiplayer suite is still a bit clusterfucky, and the frantic pacing can feel hostile to new players. At launch, Gears 5 also had some real balance in PvP performance issues. Donkey's review showcases much of the game's initial wonky unpredictability that plagued multiplayer, which combined with some loss of the weighty, heavy feel that had defined past games, leads many fans to express disappointment with the initial PvP offering. Fast forward to now, Season 6. Really starting in Season 2, things began to come together, but as of today, I am thrilled and enthusiastic to declare that Gears 5 is an absolute joy to play. It's still a Microsoft exclusive, ergo a little bit of a Chad title and a tiny bit on the over-monetized side, but thankfully some updates to the game's currency and unlocking systems has made it feel far less obligatory to have literally any quantity of good cosmetics, so if you play the game at all, you'll probably get enough drops or unlocks or whatever to feel satisfied without paying for anything if you really don't want to. I don't love the monetization system by any means, but after the Microsoft dark age of UI monetization that was Halo 5, Forza 6, and Gears 4, it does feel like a far less predatory and intrusive system. And if I don't want to deal with it, and I don't, the game lets me just ignore it without feeling like I'm missing out, and that's a good thing. Now updated with a year plus of patching, Gears 5 has put some of the weight back into its gameplay and feels remarkably kinetic as a result. The stiff gameplay lapsed players might expect is long gone. Gears 5 is built to be an Xbox flagship title, and even if it doesn't have the popularity, from a technology standpoint, it has earned that distinction. Furthermore, the sheer scope of the offering on display with Gears 5 as a title included with Xbox Game Pass is impressive. The full PvP experience, now augmented with a slate of new modes including a flighting playlist, returns as expected, as does the famous Horde mode. The new mode, Escape, was basically unplayable at launch, but has since become my personal favorite choice for PvE content in the entire series. The mode streamlines the Horde wave system into a sprint to the finish with an extensive difficulty and gameplay modifier set that keeps the experience fresh week in and out. With a crew of any ability, you'll be playing on the harder difficulties and probably getting wrecked here and there. Don't be afraid to start on easy and work your way up while you learn the ins and outs of the mode. as while it might seem like a walk in the park at times, at others, the sandbox on display can really toy with you, and the modifiers and encroaching death fog the mode inflicts on the players makes every moment, every combat encounter more tense. It's not that there aren't other game modes like this in other titles, it's that it all feels like a really natural extension of the already vast sandbox of Gears modes, and a welcome addition. It's also the kind of thing where if PvE isn't your cup of tea, you could ignore it wholesale without really having to feel like you've missed out on something essential. Everyone wins, honestly, and whenever Gears 6 eventually pokes its head out of the sand for the new 1X, I hope that the mode gets a true next-gen sequel. Let's talk about the esports prospect of the Gears series. Gears 4 had a clear and apparent bend towards a finely tuned PvE experience with the intent to improve the franchise's fortunes as an esports title. Whether or not Gears has really come up in that department, I honestly can't say, but it sure doesn't feel like it. Certainly not like Overwatch, Counter-Strike, Valorant, or other titles that seem to soak up all the oxygen in the competitive gaming room. Being a Microsoft exclusive has certainly held the franchise back in that department, but the general perception of it just not being taken all that seriously by the community at large doesn't help either. There's also the fact that the game's third-person perspective, while fundamental to its gameplay and design, is just not as popular as its first-person competitors in esports. I guess what I'm saying is, I get it. I get why Gears hasn't flourished as a competitive title like it aspires to, but I'm here to say that it's worthy of some attention. Look, to be honest, I don't really like Valorant. It's obviously a good game and I can see the appeal. It has this feeling of inherent fairness, in quotes, to it that both renders it incredibly boring and perfect for esports. It also feels like it has a high skill ceiling that rewards players who are really willing to dig into its more advanced mechanics. Compared to something as finely tuned as Valorant, or something with as much character and prestige as Overwatch, Gears feels relatively straightforward. Big shooty space marines. In 5, you run a little faster, jump a little further, juke a little more quickly, or so it feels anyway. I've said kinetic, and I'll say it again, not in the same way that something like Titanfall 2 is, certainly, but in terms of gameplay, I'd put a rapid match of Gridiron on par with Destiny 2 or Apex Legends. The modern briskness that comes with the underlying tech functioning as a well-oiled, tested, and efficient machine is there. When you hit into cover from the furthest distance possible and you fly into the fray only to burst around the bend and pop a shell into your enemy's torso and watch them shatter to pieces, everything clicks. Gears 5 feels good to play, and on some level, that's what counts the most. I think people who have played other cover-based shooters of yore have an impression that these games are a bit stiff, and Gears 5 feels like a clear step up in this department. I guess what I'm saying is for the competitive gamer boys and girls out there who have looked right past Gears 5 because of what it is and not how it actually plays, maybe look again. There's potential here, and I hope giving the franchise a permanent home on PC as well as Xbox will let it thrive in a more pervasive, well-supported ecosystem. Or maybe not. And maybe Gears is always going to play 17th fiddle in the esports market. I don't want to go that deep into campaign discussions because this isn't a true review. I'll just say that I think it's pretty great. It's as corny sometimes as you might expect with characters shaped like refrigerators doing big mocap emotions and some really high-fidelity quick-time stuff, but it works for the most part. The campaign fits around an open-world hub structure that links instant zones where specific story missions play out. It's not a true open world in the same way that GTA or Sea of Thieves is, but it's still a mostly great way to experience Gears combat. It's still a cover-based shooter at heart, but it doesn't quite feel so much like an endless series of corridors as past entries did. I bought a PS4 over quarantine and have played through all the big PS exclusive franchises since last February, and I was surprised at how much the Horizon Zero Dawn campaign in particular felt like Gears 5. Which sounds like high praise when you say it out loud, and yeah, I guess it is. But where the campaign deserves a little extra shout out is noob mode. Gears 5 is the first game I can remember in ages that has a co-op mode with a full suite of campaign settings dedicated to your friend who just can't deal with the frenetic, wall skating, barrel rolling, shoddy pumping, chainsaw revving Gears action. You get to play as this little robot who's basically invincible and functions as a support unit for the big boy gamers who are holding their own weight. The robot can deal damage, collect ammo for teammates, and just generally wreak some havoc on the battlefield. And while eventually the mode becomes way overpowered, its novelty is the kind of thing that makes a seemingly unapproachable Chad game like Gears approachable. And maybe that's it. Maybe Gears isn't approachable. Maybe all the loud noises and screaming aliens and monsters and chainsaw and blood and gore and Michael Bay vibes and R rating are just too much for Gears to be as big as it once felt like it was evidently destined to be. And I think Gears 5 is destined to be underrated. The exclusivity aspect hurt its ability to be pervasive in the way that something like Overwatch is on a level that's probably insurmountable, though being on PC from launch and essentially free with Game Pass is a good start. Gears of War as a franchise also feels distinctly American, with its linebacker protagonists and bang energy drink vibes that I strongly suspect doesn't quite have the undying international appeal that Overwatch and its Pixar anime aesthetic inspires. I've been ringing the Titanfall 2 as the best FPS on the market bell for 4 years now, and people have only recently started coming out of the woodwork to express that sentiment. I'd love for Gears 5 to experience a similar late renaissance of sorts, but I don't expect it to, and that's a shame. The Coalition did good work. Microsoft let their talented developers cook without the invisible hand trying to wring dollars and cents out of every menu screen, and with now a solid chunk of public feedback, tweaking, and reworks, the game is a fully featured, well-oiled machine. I still think Titanfall 2 has the best gameplay out there, but Gears is damn impressive in its own right. It has a breadth of content that feels both supremely welcome and distressingly uncommon in the free-to-play era. Since Microsoft announced Infinite's PvP offering is going free-to-play, I fully expect them to do something similar with Gears 5 at some point. And it's possible the window has already closed for this particular installment of the franchise to thrive like it deserves, but with strong future support and maybe a new influx of players when the game goes free-to-play, it's possible that Gears 5 will live to fight on.